Hey everybody, this is Tim Sutton with A New Perspective. I appreciate everybody joining us for the show, and just wanted to fill you in if you haven't been here before and seen what we're doing. We're trying to give people a new perspective of disabilities, disability community. I actually travel the country and train officers and public safety officers, anybody else who will listen, about autism, Alzheimer's, intellectual disability, other cognitive issues, so that we've got a better understanding of what's going on in their world and how to better interact. And I often tell people, as far as law enforcement, I was sworn to protect everybody, not any particular population, but protect everybody. So why not understand different populations a little more? So officers and basically everybody can go out there and interact more efficiently, effectively, and take care of our communities. So last week we talked about, I was on here talking about a nonprofit I'm working with to help get started called A Better Understanding. You can go to abetterunderstanding.org, learn more about what we're trying to do in the Richmond, Virginia area. But I've got a guest with me tonight who I wanted to have on the show for a while as things started to ramp up. And I met her probably about 4 or 5 years ago, actually at a disability awareness training. We sat there, and I was supposed to be one of the instructors for the training, but I was actually the student that day. And I sat there, and once this class started, the videos started showing, and actually I popped up on the screen and was talking to the camera, talking to the class, and everybody started looking at me like, you look familiar. You look like that guy. And yeah, I had assisted with developing some of that curriculum. But I got to meet this individual and found out her story. She actually works for Chesterfield County Police Department. And that's actually where I cut my teeth and learned all about being a law enforcement officer. Interesting thing was reading her bio. She went through the 38th Basic Police Academy in Chesterfield, and I went through the 17th. So I was there and gone by the time she started working there, and I think I would have enjoyed working with her as well as for her. But I'd like to introduce Lieutenant Kylene Paranto to you. And the reason she's here is because she has a child on the spectrum, on the autism spectrum. And she's done some amazing things. Her bio is absolutely amazing. And one of the things I picked up on was her dedication to diversity and inclusion. And that's a lot of what we deal with. And we're working on with our nonprofit is trying to focus on diversity, focus on inclusion, and including people by taking part of their lives, having functions, parties, and things for people with disabilities, which I prefer to call differabilities. But what I'd like to do is introduce everybody to Lieutenant Kylene Paranto.
Hello,
hey,
Tim.
How are you doing, Kylene? I'm glad to have you here, and I appreciate you coming to see us.
Thank you so much for having me. I feel so honored and privileged. Thank you so much.
We're blessed to have you here. And there she is, sporting a uniform, and lots of ribbons there, and a lot of good police work and taking care of the community. So tell one thing I want to know, but tell us about yourself. But my first question was, what drew you? You're from Pennsylvania. What drew you down here to Chesterfield County, and what drew you to become a law enforcement officer?
Yeah. So I guess going way back, I always wanted to be a police officer. You can ask my parents in elementary school. There was something about it I was always attracted to. I loved helping people, and just my heart really was in the community. And I ended up going to college for criminal justice. I went to Shippensburg University for my bachelor's degree. And I really just started looking all over, and I had a connection down here at the time, and I applied to all over actually. And when I went to test for Chesterfield, it was just amazing. It was really like a family atmosphere. I guess that was a long time ago, over 20 years ago. So I just hit 20 years in January. So, and ever since then, I just really took off there, and I loved it. Did some detective work, and ended up getting my master's degree while working.
Wow.
And met my husband here in Virginia. And yeah, so things just really kept progressing for me, and I loved it and just never really looked back.
Well, that is awesome. 20 plus years, you've done your time, and just reading everything you've done, you've been involved in so many different aspects of it, personnel, and now you're watch commander for
Yes.
Fallen Creek area down on Jefferson Davis Highway, if you want to call it. I know it's referred to as so many different things, but yeah, it's right there by the city line. And I guess the job itself, the law enforcement aspect, was it a culture shock to you when you started doing the job, seeing things that you never really expected to see? Because we see so many things that the average public, the general public, they don't see on a daily basis. So how was your introduction into that?
Yeah, definitely different from where I grew up. I grew up from very, very country, rural area in Pennsylvania, and moving into the police department, and it was just cultural shock in the police academy. But our training is amazing. I really felt prepared for doing the job.
Right.
Because I knew in my heart that's what I wanted to do, so I was not going to quit. It was just something that I was very determined to do. So yeah, check out our website. It's joinccpd.org. And I want to make sure I got that right. Joinccpd.org. And you can look all over our department. It's amazing. There's so many opportunities. I have had so many wonderful opportunities over the years. Phenomenal culture. It's just amazing within the police department. But yeah, they really prepared me, I felt like, to do the job and to do it well. Our community loves us. We have a phenomenal community. So yeah, it was a little bit of culture shock for me growing up where I grew up. But I really felt prepared. They really do a phenomenal job. Yeah.
Yeah, I will always take the experience I had out there and keep that with me, because I learned so much, and not just about the community, but about myself and being able to handle myself in certain situations.
Yep,
and you end up in situations where you can't believe you're in that situation, but you do what you have to do through that training, the great training you get, and you overcome and you get the job done.
Yes, it is so true. They really, it's so true when you revert back to your training, and they do well with that.
Well, it's interesting because you've worked with a lot of people I worked with, and you're actually working for a lot of people I worked with. And I'm constantly hearing great things about Chesterfield, and just keep everybody out there, just keep doing what you're doing, because y'all are really making a huge name, and you've got the support of your chief. I had the opportunity a week and a half to go to meet him. Very personable, seems like a very caring individual who cares about his officers as well as the public. And it was a pleasure to meet him. So I enjoyed that, and I appreciated that. So
he's amazing.
Let me, the reason we met was that training that we had for the disabilities. And you shared with me at that time that you had a child who was on the autism spectrum. And we talked briefly about it, but I just I was just curious if you could tell us a little bit about your child. Not too much, some information doesn't need to be out there, but I was curious how your mindset for the job may have changed potentially when you discovered that you had a child with autism. Because the reason I got into what I do is, and I've shared it before, is the first child I met who was on the spectrum, it was in reference to the tracking system we use to help find them should they go wandering off. And the first boy I met, as soon as he walked up, his fixation was my gun. He wanted his hand on my gun. Mm-hmm. And we kept telling him, no, Matthew, don't do that. Then he would come up and lean against it. And we would say no. And then at some point I was talking to mom and dad at the kitchen table, and I felt something underneath my seat, and I looked down, and Matthew actually was laying on the floor with his finger up the barrel. My thought was, okay, with autism, unless there's an underlying circumstance, visually there's no difference. You can look at somebody with Down syndrome and tell they have Down syndrome, but with autism, unless there's an underlying circumstance, they look no different than anybody else. And how easily it could be 20 years, 25 years down the road to misinterpret a behavior. So did your mindset as being a law enforcement officer, how did having a child with autism, did that affect that at all?
For me, when I ended up teaching a class during our yearly in-service a few years ago, and I was really happy and excited to do that because I was actually able to give real life scenarios and real life things that we've experienced with our son. He is 12 and he's a twin. He has a twin sister, and we didn't find out he was on the spectrum till he was probably 8 or 9. I think he was 8 or 9. He was a little bit older, but there was just some behaviors that seemed to progress as he was getting older and maturing as a kid. There was just some things that were just a little bit off. So we just kind of kept pursuing them. And we've been through a lot of therapies and currently in ABA therapy, working them out. But from a law enforcement perspective, for us, I really am worried socially. He definitely is, and we talked about this, a one command kid. It takes him a while. He'll stumble with his answers if he's nervous. He'll stumble with really exactly what he's trying to say or maybe what you're asking. He gets overwhelmed very, very easily. Sensory overload is very, very true. His stimming is kind of snapping his fingers, or he has a lot of kind of just fidgeting constantly. So really some awkward behaviors that could really stand off as something different than maybe what we're trained to, kind of look for in those cues. So you really have to be patient, and you really have to be, just kind of aware of the social atmosphere if they're a little overwhelmed. So you really have to be careful with that. Some kids may not, get the in-depth therapy that others may, and learning coping skills and coping strategies and how to communicate. And, there's just such a big spectrum that it really depends. Everyone has different abilities and strengths and weaknesses when it comes to the spectrum. So, we really have to be kind of schooled up with what it's about and, all of the, all the symptoms of autism, because there's just so many. Yeah.
And the three main areas are your social challenges, communication challenges, and you talked, the repetitive behavior, the stemming. And, what I try to do, it's one thing to know that the person, when you're going to interact with them, a lot of people think autism, they think a child, but they don't necessarily think of an adult. But it's good to have that information that, okay, this person's on the spectrum when you're responding or when you're interacting. But we have so many situations, every situation we go in, law enforcement wise, everything is a little bit, this call is a little bit different than this call. There are always different aspects that are different. And what I try to do is give officers, give people just a little bit of information to be able to pick up on a behavior. Maybe, if they walked up and your son was snapping his fingers or something because he's being overstimulated, we in law enforcement are told, you get in there and you take control of the situation. And we're telling them, stop snapping your fingers, stop snapping your fingers. Well, our radios, siren, lights may be overstimulating where he's sitting there snapping. And in reality, letting him snap his fingers or shake his hands does not mean we are not in control of the situation. Allowing them to continue that behavior, as long as it's not dangerous or threatening, is going to allow us to have a more peaceful encounter, because they're trying to control whatever is overstimulating them. So being able to realize that, obviously, if somebody's standing there with a screwdriver or a knife in their hand and they're shaking their hands, and we need to take that threat away. But the fact that they're standing there snapping their fingers or something is not necessarily a danger or a threat. but allowing them to continue to do that does not mean that you're not in control of that situation.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
So,
Yeah.
you know, what are some things you say his stemming, but we had talked before about maybe asking one question at a time,
Mm-hmm.
giving him opportunity to process that question and provide that answer. And I share with you, young man, I know that it would take 10, 15 seconds to be able to provide that answer.
Yes.
He's not trying to be deceptive. He's not trying to get away with something, but he's trying to use his brain, and he's processing it, because people with autism are absolutely brilliant. And you can probably share some things about your son to show how brilliant he is. They just process things differently. So anything about like your son years from now, some of the behaviors may still be there, whether he's still snapping his fingers and all. But again, we shared earlier that the individual on the spectrum is 7 times more likely to have an encounter with law enforcement than somebody who's neurotypical. Yes. Some of those behaviors following along his whole life. What would you want officers to know about your son should they have to interact with him?
I think if anything, my husband and I always really, me being in law enforcement, he understands, he's very much a rule follower. My husband's a Marine, and, right. He definitely knows. He's very convicted about doing the right thing. And he always wants to do the right thing. And he always is coming to, say when someone's not following the rules, because he knows what's right and wrong. And if you don't follow what's right, it's so if anything, you really, sometimes you're not able to know their heart because they don't communicate very well. Or, socially, they just either maybe appear a little bit awkward, or they, will, maybe say things that are inappropriate or don't fit the situation. Right. But they really mean well. And it's really hard for them to stay focused on a task, or, to answer questions from an officer. So if anything, it's just really being patient, not being too, asking 3 questions right in a row, because that'll just be way too much. Still at 12, he's still a 1 command, maybe 2 command on a good day, of things to ask or things to do. And I actually make him repeat it to me. What did I just ask you to do? What are the 2 things I need you to do right now? So, I don't know. It just really depends on the kid or the adult, at what level, what's, where they fall on the spectrum, in asking them one question, and say, can you, maybe they need to repeat the question to you to understand. Maybe, it could be, the back and forth communication could take a while. But, we are trained in CIT, and again, with the training in Chesterfield, it's amazing. We really, really are a compassionate department. It's really the best destination for anyone wanting to get into law enforcement, because the training's great, the community's great, and we really, really do what we can to teach and train for these types of scenarios. So yeah, if anything, I think it's just patience and understanding and compassion and empathy. We're here and this is what we do. So, so as a mom, patience, and just hope that everything goes smoothly, and that, know that he is a rule follower. And
sometimes you have to, and that's what, I know teachers sometimes have issues. How do you deal with this issue? And like you said, rule followers, many times they are very, very much rule followers. And you being in law enforcement probably promotes that even more. But as you alluded to earlier, if you've met one person with autism, you've pretty much met one person with autism. Every single person is different. And just understanding things. And I've got one young man who I know, if I want to carry on a conversation, when I start the conversation, I've got to bring up one of a couple things. Baltimore Orioles, because loves the Orioles, can tell you anything and everything you want to know about it. And politics, knows anything and everything you want to know about politics. But I know if I want to talk to him, I kind of have to throw some of that out there to draw him in, and then I've kind of gained his attention, and we can
Yes.
talk about some other things. Are there things for your son that are really you mentioned earlier about his when we were talking to Anthony, who's producing this show, about the acting, that he's done some acting and stuff in school play.
Yep. So when I mentioned CIT training, it's really learning how to communicate and really kind of drawing out that empathy within people.
Right.
And, for our son, he wants to be a director, and he is all about movies, and he could name any actress or actor and all the movies they've been in. And he can, for years, he was little, he would listen to like the first 2 seconds of a song and tell you what movie that song was in. So he definitely. So again, in that we were trained to kind of, I was on negotiations for 10 years. So we're kind of we're taught to, learn those hooks or do whatever you can to get that hook with that person. And so it's just really about listening. Your active listening skills are huge when it comes to, communicating with anyone, with autism.
Right. Yeah. Do you all incorporate autism in your CIT training?
I believe so. I believe so. At some point, it's a week-long school, so I'm sure they do. It's been years, and they've probably critiqued it since I went through. Right. I'm sure they do. Yeah.
Because I know in my jurisdiction, I come in and do a 2-hour block on autism. And even though autism is not a mental health disorder, there's nothing to say people with autism don't have mental health disorders, but sometimes the way you interact with them is very similar. And the thing is, they are brilliant. And, I can only imagine day to day, you see your son doing some things. It's like, how in the world did he know how to do that? I tell a lot of parents, I said, with autism being sensory driven, I feel like they're absorbing so much more than we do as neurotypical individuals. And we're going past things, and we don't even pick up on all this stuff that's out there. And in some ways, I wonder if we're the ones with the special need and they get it. They're in tune with everything. But I think in our job with being law enforcement, the flashing lights, the sirens, the jacked up radios, louder to go, we've conditioned ourselves not to hear anything on the radio until we hear our number call, but it took years and years of practice. But you can only imagine how overstimulating that can be to someone on the spectrum who's just absorbing all of that. And you being a supervisor, being a lieutenant, when your officers are on a call dealing with somebody with autism or another disability, it's going to take some time. It's not a clear up and leave as quick as possible because you got assignment to follow here. But there are times when it's just going to take some time, and you don't want to shortchange yourself. Your goal is to go out there and do your job effectively. And that's what I try to get across in my training, teach you ways to get out there and do it effectively. And it takes some time. So as a supervisor, you being a supervisor, I'm sure you understand that and let your officers do what they need to do to get the job done.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. You touched on sensory. Very, very sensitive to sounds. That was one of the first things we picked up on.
Right.
And then it just kind of progressed over the years, and we just really didn't understand why until I really started researching autism, and things just started to fall in line with that. So sensory overload is definitely a real thing. Well,
and I think I may have shared it last week or some other time about, I'm sure your agency has the CAD system where you can put notes as far as residents, and I try to encourage parents to disclose the information, because it's to know that you're on the way to a call where somebody in the house does have autism, does have Alzheimer's or another disability. That is great information to have when you're responding to the call. And I've had fire departments want to know, well, why do we need to know that? I said, well, your son may, being on the spectrum, may have a place that when he gets stressed or overstimulated, he may have a place where he goes to decompress. Well, if that child lives in a house, second floor, bedroom in the back is his, and when he or she gets stressed, they go into the closet and just try to decompress. Well, what do you think that child's going to do when they smell smoke or the house is on fire? because that fire department, having that information in the CAD system is important. So that fire department, public safety, when they're on the way to the call, having that information, they know I've got to get in that house. I've got to get to that closet because that's probably where that individual is. And it's not going to be a piece of cake getting them out of that closet because that's their safe space. But they have that information and know they've got to get in there and get them out. So there's so many avenues, and a lot of it comes down to disclosure. And that's why I commend you for, the position you're in, willing to come on here and share the information with me. And this is not just an issue that affects outside of law enforcement. There are plenty of officers who are living the autism journey. And, sometimes we in law enforcement, we don't talk to each other about a lot of stuff, but these are the things that you need to talk to each other about to help. And that way, you've got somebody else on your side or somebody else that understands what's going on. So I commend you for coming, and I'm very appreciative for you coming on here to share this.
Thank you. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes. I've been able to kind of give back to, just other people, kind of sharing our journey, sharing our resources, that, the steps we've taken, the, trial and error that we've had with our son over the years, kind of walking this out and continue to walk this out.
Right.
So I've just been very blessed with an amazing department that supports me and my family. It's just amazing. I love to kind of share whatever I can when I can. It's great opportunity. Thank you.
I appreciate you being on here. And like I said, it's we're all out there trying to serve every population, and we're trying to understand. And obviously our job, it doesn't change year to year, only year to year or month to month. Our job, our role is changing day to day. And our goal is not, or our job in law enforcement is not how it used to be 30 years ago. You go out there and arrest people and you enforce traffic. We're out there to interact and try to make our communities better and safer and show people that we care about them. And the empathy part you brought up is huge. Having that empathy to understand what's going on. And real quick, I did a class probably 2 months ago, and I found out some lady in my class was divorced, but she came to the realization that she said her husband had always told her he didn't have empathy. He couldn't have empathy. He did not know how to have empathy. So during their marriage, when things would happen, he would have to revert back to a television show or a movie he had seen to figure out what the appropriate response was in those situations. And I found that absolutely amazing. And that's what's scary. If some individuals with autism are learning how to respond in certain situations based on what they see on TV, based on what they see on the movie, in the movies. And I'm like, it could have a disastrous outcome where law enforcement may get involved and have to do our job. But no, I appreciate you being here. And anything you want to share us about Chesterfield, give us the website. And if anybody's interested in Chesterfield,
sure.
Share whatever you got.
Yeah, it's just joinccpd.org. Just amazing department. We exist to preserve life, protect the vulnerable, and problem-solving partnerships, which is what, we thrive to do. We love our community, and recruit, retain top-tier talent. So, we're just an amazing department, and check it out. We're awesome. We'd love to have you. And thank you so much, Tim. I appreciate it.
You're very, very welcome. And when I get some more classes lined up for some officers around the area, I'd love to have you come in and just speak for a few minutes about your life experience and your journey with autism. I think it would mean a lot because I don't have children on the spectrum. I'm out there teaching it all. But to have a law enforcement officer come in who does the job as well as lives the autism journey, I think it lends itself to really provide great information to other people. So I want to thank you for coming on. Hopefully I can get you back on again and we can share even more. I know your mom's watching. So hi, Mom. I appreciate you allowing your daughter or providing your daughter for us down here in Richmond to reach some people and really impact some lives. So thank you so much to her. And Kylene, again, thank you for your family for allowing you to come on and talk to me. And I appreciate everything you're doing. So just make sure you do me a favor and stay safe.
I will. Thank you. You too. I appreciate
Lieutenant.
it. Thank you.
Sure. Everybody, I just want to thank you for being here. If you weren't here to see it live, please tune in. You got YouTube, we've got an Apple platform, podcast, Spotify. Thank you, Anthony Griffo, because you're doing some amazing things. and you're getting this and helping me get this information out there, bringing people on like the Lieutenant Paranto. And just thank you so much. So I appreciate everybody being here. And, hopefully you learned something. Please reach out and contact me if you have any questions. My email is aawareness12@yahoo.com. Please check out our nonprofit we're working on. It's betterunderstanding.org. We're planning on doing some big things here in the Richmond area. And I just want to thank everybody for being here. And Dad, thanks for watching. I love you.